If we look back to our scenario on the country road, the insulators that are on top of those telephone poles will imply that we've observed a little bit more about what's happening closer to us, and further away those become dots and not distinct at all. Grasses might be something that appear closer. Flowers in the grass might be something that brings our attention to this area, where way back we may just rely on those dots I was showing you earlier, stippling or whatever it might be, to create a little bit of what's going on down the road. If I took this road itself and thought about it as a gradation, further down the road, we'd be dealing with another element to create depth, and that's working with values. So this road, having some contrast to it, a little bit more darks here, and even if I took the salt we had shown you earlier and done a rubbing on top of this, we could create detail in the road, lessening further down. And in this case, on this post, the darkest darks are here, with the lightest lights being here, trying to create a gradation, moving you into the picture. I guess this is a subliminal hawk that I had drawn on this post, so we'd have to lessen his appearance by taking an eraser and just blotting off some of that. Outline or edge treatment. It's a tough one to deal with because it's not detail. It's not quite the same. One of the ways I show it to the students is I take a regular piece of paper and tear it. And whatever that random edge is, it's going to be pretty sharp if I take and use a pencil against the background to create a lot of contrast. You'll see that there's an edge forming. And if I wanted to do a gradation, for example, I could take that paper and do a nice gradation, but the closer the edges are in value, the better. And I don't want distinct detail or edge treatment there, and I'll try to limit it through something that either this done with a pencil, or I'll take a cotton swab and already just rub onto that background. But where I see more of this edge treatment consideration is if I take the corresponding piece. So I've ripped this paper in two, and if I take the piece that I had used, then I can flip it over, line it up, and sometimes soften the other edge below it using that same pattern to create maybe foothills or less distinction between them, and it's not the same as values. Now if I took this sky here and took the cotton swab, found another area where I could rub some dust off of it, and just continue the same treatment at the bottom, I might be able to soften those lines, and going over both of them would do the same. Taking an eraser and erasing out of that area would give us the appearance of clouds. And I know I haven't got it very dark here, so I can still put more layers on, but the impression is to use an eraser, a blending stump, something to just soften the edges. I know we haven't talked about the blending stump, but it's a piece of paper that can be dipped into graphite, and I'll just charge this with a little bit more. And I'll use the tip of this rolled up piece of paper basically to draw with. So if I have something I want to accentuate, like the bottom of a cloud, I will start with a blending stump, usually softening it with a piece of paper, or in this case, cotton batten. And if my sky needs to be darkened, I can continue the process. I'm going to try to use another picture that shows a few of those elements that I'm talking about in this particular drawing. If you look at this goat, the highest contrast is in the front. It's the animal itself that you notice. But in the background, there are clouds, there are soft areas. The value difference between the mountains and the sky is hard to distinguish between. But when we get into the trees that are down in this area, you'll notice that you can see the edge. It's sharper. These rocks are the same composition that are on those mountains. If you were to walk along that edge of this mountain, you'd find all that detail or edge crispness. And I'm trying to differentiate between detail, but back here you smoothen out the line, you straighten it out, and You don't make the jump too noticeable from background to foreground using values. It's basically softening it, straightening it out, putting less of that detail in there. As much as you might be tempted to show people that if you were walking along here, you'd see little rocks and boulders and everything that you might trip over, you refrain from that back here and show more of that edge along here, that sharpness, along the tree line, the crispness that might be along there, or the fur.